So what I want to see today, as I mentioned, I want to see an important Gemara in Bava Kama, where there's a Tosfos also similar to what we see on Bava Metzia Chav Daled, and then we're going to see some Rambams. Okay, so the Gemara is Bava Kama Tzadik Tes Amud Beis. The Gemara starts a few lines before it gets wide, but we're not going to do that Gemara. But that's a discussion about a machlokus, whether a shochet, if he makes the animal treif, is he responsible or not? And it matters whether he was paid or he wasn't paid, but it was free. Was he a mumche? It's a machlokus in Tanoim. But we're going to pick it up with right around halfway down the wide lines. We're going to Amar Rabba Bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan. The first word on the line is kaima. In the old Shasas, it's right above the Hagos Harav Renshburg. But the first word on the line is Kaimelan, and we want to pick it up. Amar Rabba Bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan. I'll give everybody a chance to find it. It's just less than halfway down the wide lines.
Tzadik Tes Amud Beis?
Tzadik Tes Amud Beis in Bava Kama.
Bava Kama.
As we say in Rav Ruben Kamenetsky Shir, right? By the shish kebab.
Okay, so it's Amar Rabba Bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Tabach Uman. Everybody with it? Or should I wait another minute? Everybody has it? Tabach Uman means an expert. We have professionals and we have amateurs. So the Gemara discusses the responsibility of a professional versus the responsibility of an amateur. And we'll see how that plays out. Tabach Uman shekilkel. So if he's an expert tabach and he ruins it, means he shechts it bad, he's chayiv, he has to pay for the value of the animal. The afilu hu uman kitabchet tzipori. Uman kitabchet tzipori is an example of super experts. And we're going to see that even in expertise, there are different levels of expertise. Okay, so that's Rabbi Yochanan's statement. Frag the Gemara umiyamar Rabbi Yochanan hachi that a tabach uman has to pay. The Amar Rabba Bar Chana uvda havi kamei de Rabbi Yochanan. There was a Maisa, halacha lamaisa came to Ashayla came to Rabbi Yochanan lamaisa bichnishta de ma'on. The Amar lay, and he said to the shochet, meaning the shochet messed up, and he said to the shochet zil, go. I see raya de mamchis letarnigolim, the afterech. Bring me a raya that you're a mumche, and I will pater you. So it sounds like he's saying that if you're a mumche, I'm going to pater you. And a minute before, we just brought a Rabbi Yochanan that said that a tabach who messes up, even if he's a mumche, he's going to be chayiv. So this seems to be a contradiction. So is a mumche, mumche tabach that messes up, is he chayiv or is he pater? Answers the Gemara lo kasha, kan b'chinam kan b'schar. It depends whether he was doing it for free or he was being paid. And the earlier Gemara makes a distinction between that, because if he's doing it for free, so then he's like a shomer chinam who's patur for an ones. But if he's being paid, then it's like he's a shomer sachar who's chayiv because he's like a mazik. Again, the Gemara earlier talks about the difference between somebody who's paid, has a higher level of responsibility, and therefore, even though he's a mumche, he messes up, he's responsible. But if he's doing it for free, just like a shomer chinam has less responsibility than a shomer sachar, an uman, a tabach, who even though he's an uman, if he's doing it for free, he has less responsibility than somebody who's doing it for money. Kiha, as an example, the Amar Rabbi Zera, harotza she's chayiv lo tabach. You're about to give an animal to a shochet to shecht, and you want him to be responsible. Yaktim lo dinner. Give him $1. Pay him something to turn him into a shomer, into a bischar, even if it's just a little bit of money. The minute he gets some money, he becomes chayiv and for a mistake that he makes. Whereas if he's doing it for free, then he's pater. Okay, till here it's clear. So again, we have the principle that an uman who does it for money, first of all, he has to be a mumche. Okay, if he's not a mumche, as we saw early in the earlier Gemara that we skipped, if he's an amateur, he's going to be chayiv. An amateur is chayiv whether he is for free or for money. He's going to be always chayiv.
Why would he?
Meisvei.
Why would he be? Why would he be? Why would the? Why would a dollar? Why would a nominal amount, in other words, not a fair market fee, uh, uh, make him chayiv? I mean, he should get a fair fee. He can give a discount, but if it's a nominal amount, yeah.
Okay, so let me. I'll take it into another area of halacha, and then I'll answer you very. I could answer you very simple, but I just want you to understand why the question is not isn't based on halachic principles. Okay, so you know what? There's a difference between a shomer chinam and a shomer sachar, correct?
Right.
A shomer chinam is potter in geneva ve'aveda. A shomer sachar is chayiv in geneva ve'aveda.
Yeah.
Now, do we care how much payment the shomer sachar is getting to turn him from a shomer chinim to a shomer sachar, or is the fact that he's being paid makes him a shomer sachar?
In the real world, it should make a difference. So if you hire some schlamazel to look after the security in your house, that's one thing. But if you hire a professional FBI agent, as an example, that should be another thing. The quality of the care has got to be relevant, and the fee.
Okay, so now I will reverse it on you. Okay, remember we were starting here where the shochet was going to do it for free.
Right.
So he was ready to do it for free. So he's not asking for any money. So don't say, well, you should pay him a fair wage. He was ready to do it for free. And therefore, he would not be responsible. You want him to be responsible. If he doesn't want to do it for $1, he says, wait, I'm not going to be responsible if all you're giving me is $1. You want me to be responsible, you got to give me $50. It's absolutely within his right. Okay? All we're saying is that if you want to make it, and you know what, I'll say it even better. When it says dinner, it doesn't mean give him $1. I said it. Maybe I shouldn't have said it like that. Give him payment, okay? And if he wants more, let him say more. But the idea is once he takes money for what he's doing, he becomes responsible as a shomer sachar, so to speak. Meaning he becomes responsible for his mistake. If he doesn't want to be responsible for his mistake for such a pittance, just like the oh, you want me to guard your diamonds? You want me to guard your, I don't know, you want me to guard your knapsack? Okay, I'll be a shomer sachar for $2. You want me to guard your diamonds? I'm not going to be a shomer sachar for $2. But guess what? If you agree to watch my diamonds for $2, you're a shomer sachar.
Okay.
It happens to me every single day. It happened to me today.
Yeah, well, go ahead, elaborate.
Somebody wanted me to check a certain contract, and they wanted to pay me 100 shekel for it. I said, I'm very sorry. I don't have responsibility for the legality of a contract. If all you're paying me is 100 shekel, I have responsibility. I stand behind the recommendations that I give you. And
that was very wise, and you didn't even know the Gemara that's coming. Okay, we'll see the Gemara that's coming. Okay. 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 Meisvei. So wait. So we're about to ask a kasha on the principle. All right. The principle is that if the expert takes money, he's chayiv for a mistake, and if he does it for free, he's not chayiv for a mistake. Here's the brisa. Hamolich chitim litchon velo litatan v'asan subid. So he was given wheat to grind, and he didn't grind it properly. He messed it up. He ground it in a way that wasn't quality. Omursen kemach lach b'linachtom v'asom patni pulin. He gave him a certain kind of wheat to make bread, and he made an inferior bread. Behema litabach v'nibla, or he sent an animal to a shochet, and the shochet made it nevela because of a bad shchita. Chayiv mipnei shehu kinosei sachar. All right, so it sounds like if it says mipnei shehu kinosei sachar, it sounds like was he paid or he wasn't paid? If you've been dike in the words, we're going to make him because he's like a shomer sachar. Does it sound like he was paid or he wasn't paid?
In the kafa dimayom, I would say he wasn't paid.
He wasn't paid, and that's the Gemara's kasha. The Gemara says it sounds like you're going to be chayiv even if you weren't paid. Says the Gemara, you're right. Ema, you got to change the language, take out the kaf, and say mipnei shehu nosei sachar, because he got paid. Okay, and therefore the Gemara is reinforcing the idea that an expert who is paid is chayav for a mistake. An expert who does it for free is not chayav for a mistake because he's an expert. Okay, next. Hahu magrumta. There was an animal, the asai lekame derav. It was shechted in a certain way, and it was shechted in a way that's a machlokes in chulin, whether it's kosher or treif. Okay, so it came to Rav and Tarfei. He made the animal treif because he said the way it was shechted is not good. Upatre letabach mi l'shlume, and he exempted the shochet for pay. So he made the animal treif, and he said the shochet doesn't have to pay. Pagu bei Rav Kahana v'Rav Asi be'u gavra. So the owner of the animal was met by Rav Kahana and Rav Asi, and he told them the story. Amrulei, so Rav Kahana and Rav Asi said to the owner of the animal, Avid b'cha Rav tarte. Rav did to you two things. He did you twice. He did you twice. So it's a little ambiguous. What did he do twice? Remember, he pottered. I'm saying he traded for the animal, and he didn't make the shochet pay. So my tarti, what were the two things that he did? Well, of course, the first reaction would be ilema tarti l'greusa. He basically damaged you twice, right? The iboila lachshure. First of all, he should have made the animal kosher, and he made you lose the animal, and he should have made it kosher. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda, because Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda's shita was that what the shochet did was okay. And he made your animal treif, so you lost your animal. So he caused you a loss coming, and he caused you a loss going. Right? I'm sorry. He should have made it kosher, and he made it treif. Okay. The inami kirabanan, and if you want to say that, okay, it's treif like the rabbanan, then he should have made the shochet chayav. In other words, you lost your animal and you didn't get paid. And he's saying, either the animal was kosher and you shouldn't have lost your animal and the shochet's off the hook because he did a good shchita, or no, the shochet did a bad shchita, you lost your animal, but you at least should have gotten paid. And what ended up happening? You lost your animal, okay? You lost your animal and the shochet didn't have to compensate you. So he smashed you twice. So says the Gemara, if that's what happened, so then think carefully. What did Rav Kahana and Rav Asi say to this guy? He criticized the Dayan's psak. Umishari lemeimer ki hai gavda? Were they allowed to criticize the Dayan's psak after the psak was given? V'hatanya l'chishiyetze, when a Beis Din goes out and the Beis Din reached the psak, lo yomar, none of the Dayan were allowed to say, oh, you should know, I think you should have won, but those other guys, they made you lose. Ani mizake v'chaveri mechayvin, aval ma ese chaveri rabu alai. You're not allowed to say that. It's Lashon Hara. So the Gemara is comparing a Dayan who goes out and tells the Baal Din who lost, I really wanted you to win, okay, to what Rav Kahana and Rav Asi said to him in the event that that's what they meant. If they meant, Rav messed you up twice. He should have made the animal kosher, and if not, he should have made the shochet pay. So that's lo teichel rachel be'amecha. You're not allowed to criticize a psak after the psak is given. Again, I'm not going to get into the halacha l'maisa of it. The Gemara is comparing that. So therefore, that can't be what they meant. Ella tarti. What does he mean? They said tarti l'mal yusa. He did you two favors. You owe Rav a double yashakayach. A double yashakayach. Well, he made my animal treif, right? And he didn't make the shochet pay me, and for that I owe him a yashakayach. Not only one yashakayach, but two yashakayachs. Says yeah. The law chalcha safek isura. First thing is, he prevented you from eating something that might have been usur. By saying treif according to it's treif according to the Rabbanan and not kosher like Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda, he took you out of safek. Because if you would have eaten it, it's a suffix whether you ate treif. He prevented you from eating suffix treif. That's the first yashakayach. And he didn't make the shochet pay. Umenacham is suffix zela. And also, if the shochet would have paid when he wasn't supposed to pay, okay, then you would be having money that doesn't belong to you. Okay, let's just see Rashi. A few interesting Rashis on this. Okay, so go back to the Rashi Magrumta. Okay, so Magrumta, everybody see the Rashi? It's further up. All right, it's a few lines above where we started the Amar Rabbi Yochanan Gemara. Magrumta shochat mitoch achas hat boos v'higrim. It's a technical term in shchita where he did a certain shchita and he didn't go all the way. Chutz me tabas letabat v'shir malei chut al pnei ruba. He shechted it in a certain way. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda machshirle. Rabbi Yossi, Yehuda says it's okay. B'malo chut al pnei ruba. V'rabbanon bo al pnei kula. They say it's not good enough. You got to go all the way. Okay, so what did Rav Kahana and Rav Asi say? Bahu Gavra. They met Bahu Gavra Bala Behema. They met the owner of the animal, and right. And they told him he did you two. He did you two. All right. Now what they weren't allowed to tell him that he should have. He messed you up by making the animal treif, and he messed you up by not making the shochet pay. So you're not allowed to do that because B'dayin Kamayra B'Sanhedrin. I'm sorry, that you're not allowed to talk about the Dayanim afterwards. It's called Lashon Hara. Okay, so what are the two good things? He said, no, he really did you two favors. Number one, lo achal chasteka isura. The misafka lehilchasa, come on, Ike Rabbanan, the Asrei, Ike Reb Yossi, Reb Yehuda, the Machshir. It's a suffix, who the halach is like. So he did you a favor by not eating suffix treif. And also, menacham is suffix gzela. Why? The I kashrei, idik sherahi. Because if on the side that it was kosher, havi tabach potter, and he would have made you pay. So on the one hand, he prevented you from eating suffix treif, but on the other hand, on the side that it was kosher, the shofar doesn't have to pay you. And if he would have paid you, you'd have money that doesn't belong to you. So you owe him a double yasher koyach. He prevented you from a suffix treif, and he prevented you, pay attention to that one, and he prevented you from having money that doesn't belong to you. Okay? Think about that. Okay, so that is where we are right now. So again, the basic principle is that a shochet who's an expert, if he messes up, but he wasn't being paid, he's potter. If he messes up and he was being paid, he has to compensate. That's the din. Okay, next. Itmar. Okay, everybody see a second line before it gets wide. Itmar. Hamara diner l'shulchani. So you have a money changer, and he's supposed to be an expert. And in those days, the coins, they weren't always so clear whether they retained full value or not. So you showed a coin to a money changer, v'nimtzara, and it turned out that the money changer made a mistake. The money changer said it was good, and it really wasn't good. So is the money changer responsible? So we have two contradictory brises. Tani chada umin potter, hedyot chayev. One brisa says if the money changer is an expert, he's potter. If he's an amateur, he's chayev. Meaning you go to your next door neighbor to ask him, how much is this worth? How much is this coin worth? And he gives you an answer and it's wrong, he's chayev. But if he's an expert, then he's potter. But Tanya Yidach, there's another brisa that says bein umin bein hedyot chayev. Everybody's chayev. Even the expert's going to be chayev. Amar of Papa, what's the resolution to those two contradictory brises? Ki Tanya umin potter, ki gondanku the isur. They're super experts. So you know which uman is potter? When he's a real super expert and he made a mistake, so then he's potter. Says the Gemara, wait a minute. How is he a super expert and made a mistake? Right? Elabumai toe. If he made a mistake, he's obviously not such a super expert. Says the Gemara, Ta'u besichte chadita. Basically, it was a brand new coin. He's a super expert. But the coin he was showed was a brand new coin. And even the super expert is not expected to know that. And therefore, since he's an expert, his expertise gives him an exemption from paying because he's allowed to express an opinion. But an amateur, you know what? You're an amateur. Don't rush to give an opinion. And if you made a mistake, you got to pay. Okay, so it says here that you got to, in order to be potter, you got to be a real big expert to be potter. You got to be a real big expert. Says Rashi, look at Rashi. Okay, the Rashi is about 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines from 9, 10 lines from the bottom. Hamara Diner, what's he showing it to the Chushulchani? Ladat im tovhu v'kablena mechavero. He wants to know, should I, they're offering to pay me with this coin. Is this coin good? Should I take it? Because it's going to be a negotiable coin. I'll be able to pass it on to my suppliers. Or no, I shouldn't take it. Okay, so he said, one Brisa says he makes a mistake, he's chayav, one Brisa says he's potter. And the answer is that he has to be an expert, dan ki v'isser. Says Rashi, shulchanim umnim hayu. These were the big experts, dan ki v'isser. Says the Gemara, if they're such big experts, how did they make a mistake? Answers the Gemara, to b'sichta charati. Shenifsal hamadbeya, the main coin that was always being used became, like the king said it's now not valid anymore, and he issued new coins. Ve'amidu tsura acheret. So he brought in a new coin. Ve'adayin lo hayu bekiyim ba. And they didn't realize that this coin, that the old coins have been invalidated, and the new coin is now taken over. Okay, and therefore, right, and therefore they're exonerated because they weren't expected to know. Okay,
if the amateur is chayiv because he shouldn't have offered an opinion,
right?
So the super expert should also be chayiv because he shouldn't have offered an opinion on something he didn't know about.
No, but he had no way of knowing. The default, the scenario here is he had no way of knowing. Okay, that he's not expected. He's not expected to know. There are things that happen. Again, we're talking real time. In other words, if it was a week later, he was expected to know. But if it happened yesterday, he's not expected to know.
The amateur for sure would not have been expected to know.
But the amateur shouldn't give an opinion. The amateur should know. Anytime you give an opinion, if you're an amateur and you give an opinion, you're going to be responsible. That's the difference between an amateur and a professional.
Why shouldn't
Pinchas will validate that, right? They come to me and they want me to look over the contract. You know what? If I give them an opinion that it's okay, like, what do you should have known? You should have known. You don't know what you're talking about. Just know if you're wrong, you're going to pay.
But why should an amateur be more responsible than? Why should an amateur be more responsible than a professional?
Because an amateur shouldn't give an opinion of what he's not an expert on.
But he's an amateur.
I'll say maybe
he's an amateur. He's not even a lawyer. He delivers milk every morning. You asked him a question. He offered an opinion on, and that's it. Why'd you ask an opinion from a milkman?
I hear what you want to say. You're reversing it. You're saying that the guy who asked the amateur for an opinion, right? Yeah. Okay. So again, we're not talking about a milkman. A hedyot means, the guy, he's a second-year law student. He's a second-year law student. He's still called a hedyot. He's not called an uman. He's a second-year law student. He's a shochet. He's in the process of learning shchita. He hasn't yet gotten a Kabbalah yet. All right, okay. What we're doing is we are making somebody responsible. Let me ask you a different question. What's your default? Should a guy be responsible for his mistakes or not?
A guy should be responsible for his mistakes, but certainly an expert should be responsible.
Okay, so now, good. You're asking the right question. I'm not sure we're going to go into it in the Rishonim, and maybe we will then. Anybody have an idea how to answer Ephraim's question? Why is the expert being judged more favorably than the? Why is the expert lawyer being let off the hook for his mistake, whereas the second-year law student isn't?
Right.
Yeah, Josh.
Because there was no negligence in his offering an opinion.
Keep going. Say it a little stronger so that we can convince Ephraim. Ephraim doesn't look convinced yet.
Okay. I mean, we have to live in a world where we can ask and rely upon others. But when somebody puts himself out there saying, I know what I'm talking about, and he's in fact documented and reliable, he hasn't done anything wrong. He made a mistake. Okay. But somebody who really had no right to speak and put himself out there as authority, there's an intrinsic negligence in doing so.
Wait. Again, we decided that the default is everybody should be responsible, correct?
Right.
Okay.
So you don't need to explain why the second-year law student's responsible. What you need to explain is why the expert lawyer isn't responsible.
Okay. I mean, I guess the first thing is, what's the nature of the chiyuv? I mean, this is not a mazik.
Oh, wait. So now you just turned our default on its head. You're saying like this. Let me tell you what you're saying, and this is, I think, what Ephraim is thinking a little bit. Is that, hey, you went to the milkman. It's your fault. Don't blame the milkman if he gives you bad advice. Isn't that basically what you're saying, Ephraim?
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll take a step
Okay,
further.
so we have to agree. No. We have to agree that there's a level of responsibility that when somebody is relying on you, and that's what I wasn't going to do the future Gemara, but maybe we'll have to a little further on. If I tell you, listen, I'm relying on you to tell me whether I should sign the contract or not. So that gives you a level of responsibility. And if you don't know, you shouldn't express an opinion. So by expressing an opinion when the guy says I'm relying on you, okay, right? Let's not talk about the milkman. I go to the second-year law student and I say, look, I can't really afford a lawyer. I need you to help me with this one, okay? And I'm relying on you to give me the right advice. And he gives you wrong advice, he's responsible. Your question is why, when the expert lawyer gives you wrong advice, are you not responsible? Would you like to weigh in on that before I give you the halachic answer? Or do you think that an expert lawyer should also be responsible when he gives bad advice?
I'm not sure what you're asking. If you ask me, I think an expert
I'm asking
lawyer.
Pinchas.
Oh,
Because Pinchas is a lawyer.
Well, I'll put it this way. I mean, I think a better example that we're more familiar with is medical malpractice. If a surgeon goofs up in a surgery and it was the type of mistake that another surgeon would say, hey, like these type of things happen. This wasn't a gross mistake. He didn't do something really stupid. He did something according to the normal procedure and he just missed it. He won't necessarily bear responsibility for medical malpractice. Medical malpractice is an area where, there are certain standards of care. And, my daughter is now a surgery room nurse, and she sees surgery every single day. And the stuff that they do is just totally unbelievable. And the amount of precision and thought that they go through. So even if something goes wrong, it doesn't necessarily mean that he messed up. To make a gross medical error as to making an error, there's a difference, and
Okay,
an expert
now
can
let me put it into
know that difference.
I want to inject.
Go ahead, Dan, and then I want to put it into halachic terms that I hope Ephraim will be able to accept. I hope.
In these cases, the mumcha versus the non-mumcha, are these errors comparable? Meaning, like if a non-mumcha says, I have to talk about like plumbing. I'm not a lawyer or doctor. So someone asks me, it's like, oh, my toilet does this. And I say, well, turn the valve. And it turns out like when he turns it, it creates a great big leak. And if you ask a plumber, now a plumber might know from experience that those things rust and get corroded. And you got to consider a few other factors that the layperson wouldn't even recognize. Or are we talking about the exact same mistake where like something that even a mumcha would encounter because these types of factors happen to them, and that certainly a layperson would never have thought of it, and even an expert wouldn't have thought about it. So why are he's chayiv? So like, what's the nature of the mistake? Is it something that you started to talk about, something where it was a factor that he could not have anticipated, even if he's a mumcha?
Okay, so let's go to the shochet. It may be a little bit easier to understand the shochet, and then we'll go to the money changer. Okay, we have two shochtim. One guy is still in the middle of learning shchita, and one guy has been a super expert of shchita for 20 years. Okay, and each one shechts an animal, and the animal ends up being, they end up making a mistake in the shchita. The guy who is not the expert, the assumption is he messed it up. He didn't really know the job. Whereas when the super expert messes it up, I'm going to use the key word here, ones. There's such a thing called an ones, and the assumption is that this mistake was an ones, not something of his achrayas. Okay, and just like we talked about shomrim, right? There's geneva v'aveda, and there's ones. There's certain
by
things that are
definition, you just said
considered beyond normal control. And therefore, again, obviously, if the expert was sloppy and it can be demonstrated that he didn't pay close attention, so then for sure he's going to be chayiv. We're talking here about an expert, and in fact, even the money changer, the only reason they allow him off the hook was because it was something that he wasn't expected to know. That was the Gemara's kasha. If they're such a big expert, how did he make a mistake? It's a riot that he's not an expert.
What if it was an ones on that level to the
Let me finish
amateur?
that. It's something that he's not expected to know. That made it an onus. But you're right. If, in other words, the exemption here is because of onus. And the assumption is that if a super expert lawyer approved a contract and missed something in the contract, then the assumption is that's an onus. It's something that happens that can be expected to happen even in the big expert. But if a second-year law school misses it, my assumption is that it was sloppy work. I don't assume that a big expert makes sloppy work. I assume that we're talking after the fact when the mistake was made. We assume it was sloppy work, or we assume that it was a real onus. That's going to be
a different mistake. It's a different level of mistake. We're assuming it's a different level of mistake.
Well, no. It could even be the same mistake. The same mistake in the contract. But I have to assume that the second-year law student didn't miss it because it's beyond his control. He missed it because he's sloppy. He didn't know. Okay,
but the mumcha we're saying the mumcha would have missed it too.
That's you don't know that
he was playing with fire that he shouldn't have
been playing.
I'm
sorry. There's another point. We're never talking about the same case. We're talking about a case where there was a mistake made by the second-year law student. By default, we assume that mistake was not an onus. Okay, an expert money changer makes a mistake in the money. Again, we're talking about somebody who's responsible. We're not talking about somebody who's off the hook. If the mistake was made, the assumption has to be that it was beyond his control, which is why the Gemara doesn't understand how could an expert make a mistake in coins unless there's something beyond his control. But a regular guy makes a mistake in the money. The assumption is that he didn't pay, that he shouldn't have expressed an opinion, and if he did, he's responsible. That's the explanation. Okay, Dan, you wanted to add something that I interrupted you on? No, okay.
Again, it's not clear enough. No, you're clear enough. My question isn't clear enough.
What?
I can't say with clarity, so I'll have to work it out.
Okay, go ahead, Josh. What do you want to ask?
Is this leverage on the concept of basically a chazaka and motz mechavei olav haraya? In other words, that the mumche is able to sort of be an echezkas knowledgeable so that it's assumed to be an onus and you have to prove it's not. Well, anybody else, you can't assume that it's an onus.
Maybe it could be that could part of it, part of the construct. But again, you see very clearly is that a mumche who makes a mistake is viewed like a shomer. Okay, meaning did he get paid or he didn't get paid? Whereas a hedyot is viewed, he's always responsible. He's always responsible. Okay, and therefore he's responsible. Let's read on another case, because here we haven't even got yet to the Lifnim Ashuras Adin aspect, which is what we really want to get to. Okay. Continues the Gemara. Hahu itita. There was a woman. Da Chazia dinra le Rabbi Chia. She showed a coin to Rabbi Chia. Now Rabbi Chia was viewed as an expert money changer. Okay, just that's for background. Okay. Okay. So Omar la me'al yahu. It's a good coin. You can take it from your customer. It's a negotiable coin. Lemachar asai lekamei. She came back to him. The Amrle achazite. I held on to it. I wanted to give it to my supplier. The Amrli bishu. They said, very sorry, we won't take the coin. It's not a good coin. Velo kanafikli, and they wouldn't let me spend. They wouldn't let it. They wouldn't take it as currency. So Omar now remember, Rav Chia's view, it was an expert money changer. Okay, Omar le Rav, says Rashi. Who was Rav? Why is he talking to Rav? Says Rashi, fourth line before the bottom. Rav Shomer Genozov Shel Rabbi Chia Dodo Havi. Okay, Rabbi Chia was the uncle of Rav. Rav was the nephew, and Rav took care of his finances. So he said to Rav, Zil, Chalfe Nihale. Go exchange it for her, meaning take in the coin that she showed me yesterday and replace it with a good coin. Uchtova Pinkasi, and write in my ledger, Din Isik Bish. that this was the result of a bad deal, of a bad judgment. In other words, he had to show his books. He's keeping books, and he has to show why is he minus why is he minus a $50 coin? And so he has to write in is that this expense was because I did a bad psak.
It's called an incurring bad debt.
Okay. So but the Gemara says a question. Umayshna danku ve'isri de petiri mishum de lo tzrich lemigmar. Wait, you exempted earlier. We exempted the super expert money changers because we assumed that they didn't need to know and therefore their mistake is an onus. Rabbi Chia nami lav lemigmar kaboi. Rabbi Chia also says Rabbi Chia also wasn't expected to know this. It was apparently an onus. The Gemara is saying it was an onus. His mistake was an onus. So why did he feel that he had to take it back and write in and replace it for her? Okay. Rashi says, Din isik bish schora ra'ahi shal iske chinam ani mafsid. I'm losing for no reason. Shalo hayali lira'osa. I never should have seen it. I shouldn't have looked at it. Okay. So, but Rabbi Chia nami lav lemigmar kaboi, he didn't have to know. Answers the Gemara, Rabbi Chia lifni mishur sadin hu da'avid. You're right. Rabbi Chia was not chayev. Rabbi Chia was not chayev to pay back. Okay, but he did lifni mishur sadin. Kiditani Rav Yosef, and now we're going to bring our famous brisa. Vodata lahem zebes chayim es haderach zugvilas chasodim yelchu zubikur cholim ba zukvura es amase zehadin asher yasun zu lifni mishuras hadin. Okay, so Rabbi Chia went lifni mishuras hadin. He was not chayiv. He was not chayiv to replace it. Okay, that he was exempt. And again, it's not clear. It sounds almost like she never should have showed it to him. All right, it says he shouldn't have expressed an opinion. But al pidin he was apparently not chayiv, and he went lifnei mishuras hadin. So since you asked it, the Gemara goes on to talk about. Well, I wasn't planning on reading it, but let's just read another couple of lines, and then we want to see the Tosfos at the top of Kuf Amud Aleph. Reish Lakish achvi leidinra leRabbi Elazar. So Reish Lakish showed a coin to Rabbi Elazar, and Amar Ma'al Yehu. He said it's good. The Seder Gemara, you can take it. But Reish Lakish wasn't good enough for Reish Lakish. Amar le chazi, you better see the alach kasamchina. I'm relying on you. So Amar le. So Rabbi Elazar said back to Reish Lakish, ki samachta alai my lememra. Why are you saying you're relying on me? Di mishtachach bisha beina lichlufi lacha. Because what? Because if it turns out to be bad, I'm going to have to replace it because you're saying you're relying on me. Ha'atu de amr Rabbi Meir hu didayin dina digarmi, and therefore I would have been chayiv even if you don't rely on me. My love, Rabbi Meir v'lo anyway, just showing that there's an idea that when I say I'm relying on you, that ups the ante, that ups the level of responsibility. When you say explicitly, in other words, you go to a second-year law student, okay, and you say, I'm relying on you, then that makes him fully responsible, okay? And again, the question is how much of a difference that makes, but we're not going to go into that. We want to see the top Tosfos. We saw a similar Tosfos in Bava Metzia, and we're going to review it here with not quite the same maskana. Okay, so we have Lifni Mishur Sadin, Avad Kedetani Rav Yosef Ve'odate. So Rabbi Chia went Lifni Mishur Sadin, and it brings a pasuk that explains what generated Rabbi Chia's chiyuv to go lifnei mishur sadin. Meaning Rabbi Chia's lifnei mishur sadin was generated by this idea of es hamaisa ze'adin asher yasun zu lifnei mishur sadin, that the Gemara is bringing a pasuk that generated Rabbi Chia's lifnei mishur sadin. Okay? So v'hach b'raisa ma'isi nami b'perek elu mitzias gavi zaken ben elfichvoda. We had exactly the same thing in the story of Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Yossi, where he kept picking up the thing and then being mafkir it. And the Gemara said, it's a zaken v'enol v'chvodo. He was putter. Why did he have to do it? And the Gemara's answer was, it was lifnei mishur sadin, and it brought this pasuk. Okay, lifnei mishur sadin, avad kidetani. So what Tosfos is showing you is that the Gemara has two cases where somebody went lifnei mishur sadin based on this pasuk. Says Tosfos, aval b'sof perek ha'umnin. That's the case of the barrels. where the guy broke the barrel, the movers broke the barrel, okay, and Rabbi Bar Rav Huna took away the shirts, and Rav made him give back the shirts and pay the wages. And he justified it with a pasuk from Mishle. He didn't bring this pasuk. He justified it with a pasuk from Mishle. Okay? Ela besof perak ha'umnin gabi Rabba bar Huna de shaklinu liglimayu dahanu shkulai lo maisi law. They don't bring this pasuk to make him give back the shirts and pay the wages. Ela maisi leman telech b'derech tovim, a pasuk from Mishle. Why didn't they bring this pasuk? All right, so Tosfos makes a distinction: three levels of lifnim mishuras hadin. Umefarish ri miralach the lo shayach lifnim mishuras hadin ela bedavar she'acherim chayavim v'zepot. When there is a basic din, everybody's chayav, and you have a personal exemption. That would be the zaken ve'ena lefi chvodo. Everybody's required to return a lost object, but there's an exemption for a zaken. Everybody is responsible for their mistake, but a big professional is exempt. That's the comparison here. The default is you're responsible for your mistakes, but a big professional has an exemption. Okay, Kemo Rabbi Chia dahacha, because Rabbi Chia was an expert and he had a right to be pater. But Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, be'elumitzias, because he's a zaken lefi eno lefi chvodo. Everybody would have been chayiv. He should have been chayiv, but he had an exemption because he's a zaken eno lefi chvodo. So then we bring the pasuk of Laman Yelchu b'derech Tov. I'm sorry. We bring the pasuk of Zu Yelchu ba et hamayis asher yasum ba. We bring the pasuk as hamayis asher yasum ba. Okay. Aval be'ahid de Rabbi bar Rav Huna, in the case of the broken barrel, and when Rabbi bar Rav Huna had to give back the shirts, ein chiluk beino levein acherim. Everybody was chai. Everybody was allowed to take the shirts. Nobody had to pay them wages because they were irresponsible. Okay, and therefore we don't bring a pasuk like this, but it's an extra special din where nobody is chayiv, but we made for some reason, and again the Rishonim talk about it, what made Rabbi bar Rav Huna chayiv when nobody else is chayiv. But the only thing that can make him chayiv is the special pasuk in Mishlei of Laman Yelchu. That is the re. But Tosfos didn't like that, ain't near it. Why? The beperik elu mitzias Omar, that's the case of the Aveda, where we found the Aveda in a place where we assume that the owner was miyayesh, and therefore we paskened hare elu shalom. But we said that if a Jew comes and gives you a siman to prove that he was the owner, you give it back. And the Gemara says, how do I give it back? It was hare elu shalom. I didn't have to be machriz. And the answer was, why do I have to give it back? Come on, guys, that's your cue.
Lifnei
Mishuras Hadin. That's what it says. And what pasuk did they bring there? What pasuk did they bring to justify the owner having the finder having to give it back?
Chodata.
That's not what it says.
I think it was Chodata, wasn't it?
What pasuk did they bring in the case of the Aveda where it says, right, he said, Tarti, right, you told me it's Harei L'Shalom, and then you say, I got to give it back if he gives a siman, Tarti, Lifnei Mishuras Hadin. What pasuk did they bring?
Wasn't that the one with no pasuk?
No pasuk. They brought no pasuk. So that's what's bothering Tosfos. So I have sometimes where they bring this pasuk of, where they bring the pasuk of Yelchu, Hamaisa Ze'adin Asher Yasun, Yelchun Zeh Asher Yasun, and sometimes they bring a pasuk from Mishlei, Laman Yelchu B'derech Tovim, and sometimes they bring no pasuk. In the case of the Aveda, they brought no pasuk. He just said Lifnei Mishuras Hadin without a pasuk. Says Tosfos, Ve'nira de Perek Elu Mitzias Omar de Aved Lifnei Mishuras Hadin Gabe Hade Avoid Shmuel Ashkechinu Lahanach Rachmid B'Midbara Adrina L'Marer L'Basu Tresa Yarchi. The 12, he found donkeys and he returned them 12 months later. Lifnei Mishuras Hadin Ubeahi Patre Kule Alma. So wait a minute. Everybody was pater there. Nobody had to give them back. See, mainly you want to tell me that a zaken beina lefi chvodo, everybody is chayiv and he's pater. So the zaken beina lefi chvodo, you need a pasuk of. You need a pasuk of et haderech asher yelchu bo. But the donkeys, where later on in that Gemara talked about Shmuel giving back donkeys after 12 months, nobody was chayv to give them back, and he gave it back anyway. So yesh lomar, de bahanish kuloi lo shaykh lifnim mishuras hadin. You can't talk about lifnim mishuras hadin, meaning without a pasuk from Mishlei, there would be absolutely no requirement for anybody to give them back to shirts and pay the money. But kivin shasulo has a gado, b'pshia sheshibru lo chavish shel yayin. So he says nobody is responsible to give back the barrels, and therefore you need a special pasuk from Mishlei. When everybody is responsible, but you have a special exemption, then when everybody is responsible and you have a special exemption, you need the pasuk that we have here. What Tosfos leaves unexplained here, which he did in Bava Metzia. So what's the explanation for the guy who has to return the lost object lifnim mishuras hadin with no pasuk? So if you remember Tosfos and Chavdal, we're going to see it again, but not today, but we will see it again next time. You know what? Maybe what you have guys have your Bava Metzia, or you brought the Rambams already? You have Bava Metzia with you?
Yeah.
Let's see the Tosfos there in Bava Metzia again, because that you're going to see when we get to the Shulchan Aruch, that Tosfos is going to be critical in the Psak Halacha. So let's open up again. Now that we've seen all the Gemaras that there are to see, we'll understand the Tosfos in Bava Metzia even better. So we want to see Chav Daled Amud Beis. So in Bava Metzia Chav Daled Amud Beis, that's the Gemara where they're walking in the marketplace of Goyim, and it was either Rav Yehuda was walking with Shmuel, right, or Avud de Shmuel. I'm sorry, Rav Yehuda was walking with Mar Shmuel, and then the second case was Rava was walking with Rav Nachman, okay, and in both cases the answer was Harelu Shalo, but the first case we said Chayiv Lahachzer, and the second case it says Harelu Shalo, and standing there screaming, he's screaming about his house falling down. But the first din was Lefnei Mishuras Hadin, and no pasuk, nothing was brought. So says Tosfos. Let's see, this is this is really the summary of how we apply Lefnei Mishuras Hadin. Lefnei Mishuras Hadin.
Which stuff?
Dalet Amud Beis Dibur Amatchil Lifnei Mishuras Hadin. Again, this is the first case where Rav Yehu, where Mar Shmuel was what told him that you have to give back Lifnei Mishuras Hadin. Okay, so Me'asher Yasun Nafkal on Lekaman. All right, on Daf Lamed, when we have the case of Rabbi Shmuel, where he was a zaken ve'eno lefi chvodo, and he helped the guy unload the wood and load the wood and unload the wood and load the wood, and even though he was a zaken ve'eno lefi chvodo, the Gemara said he went lifnei mishuras hadin, and he brought the pasuk of Me'asher Yasun. Says Tosfos, how come we're not bringing that pasuk here? We're just saying lifnei mishuras hadin. There, the Gemara explicitly said that Rabbi Shmuel went lifnei mishuras hadin because of the pasuk of Asher Yasun. So how come there's no pasuk here? Says Tosfos. That's Tosfos' problem. Okay. Tema delo maisi kra hacha kida maisi lekaman beuvd the Rabbi Shmuel uvagozel kama. That was the Gemara we just saw. Beuvd the Rabbi Chia. When Rabbi Chia returned the money, even though he didn't have to, we brought the pasuk of Leman Yelchu. We brought the pasuk of Asher Yasun. Okay, ulakaman besof peraka umnin. The case of the broken barrels, maisi krachrina. We have a different pasuk. Lamantelach b'derech tovit. Shu midivrei kabbalah v'shavik krad Asher Yasun. Shu midivrei Torah. If I have a pasuk in the Torah to tell me I have to go lifnei mishuras hadin, why are we bringing a pasuk from Mishlei, which is really just musar? It's musar. It's not halacha. It's musar. You have a halacha. The pasuk in the Torah is halacha. So Tosfos says we've got a problem here. We have in the case of the Aveda no pasuk. In the case of Zakavenel Vichvodo and Rabbi Chia with the money changer, we have a pasuk of Asher Yasun, and in the barrels we have a pasuk of Mishlei, a musar vort. What's going on here? So it says Tosfos. Here's the rule. Here Tosfos gives you the principle. V'yesh lomer, the lo maisi krad Asher Yasun ela b'mokum she'acherim chayavim v'hu potter. The pasuk of Asher Yasun is when the general rule is that people are chayav to do something. There's a monetary chiyuv. However, the individual is potter. Kumo mara dinner de acherim. I'm sorry, the mara dinner de acherim de ba'olim melaf. People who should have known better, they're going to be chayav. Rabbi Chia de lo boile melaf. He didn't have to know better. Potter. So there was an exception for him, and therefore lifnim mishuras hadin shileim kumo acherim. He equated himself with everybody else, meaning he didn't take the option that was available to him as an individual, and he treated himself just like everybody else. Right? He had an exemption of zaken v'enel v'chvodo, and he behaved like everybody else. And therefore, you need the pasuk. That's where you bring the pasuk of. That's where you bring the pasuk. Where you bring the pasuk that we have here, right? I'm sorry, we have on Daf Lamed of Asher Yasun. Okay, but what about here in our case? The Hacha B'Shmaitin, but in the case of the Aveda, no pasuk is brought. The Hadrinu Basar Tresa Yarche Shata, where Shmuel returned the donkeys after 12 months with no pasuk. Kuli Alma Pturin. Nobody had a chiyuv. So therefore, you can't say that I'm bringing a pasuk to make you chayav. It's completely. Wait, so where's it coming from? Mikol mokom mishum lifnim mishur sadin boy leli adure, and yet he has to return it lifnim mishur sadin, which is what it says here in the Gemara by the Aveda, and yet it didn't bring a pasuk. Why not? Kivan she'eno mischaser mamona. There's a lifnim mishuras hadin that's logical, that's ethical. Here's where we get to this idea of, here's where we can apply what Ephraim's favorite pasuk, asisa yosher v'hatov. You know what? This guy lost money. It's not appropriate that you're right, technically you're allowed to keep it. But at the end of the day, what's the net result? You're making money off of his loss. What do they say? Be large, be mevater, forgive. Okay, you don't need to make money off of his loss. What's going on in the case of the barrels? Aval b'sofa umnin dibahanu shkuloi sheshaver lo achavis v'asalo hefsed gado. But there, I lost money. You want to tell me I shouldn't make money off of your back? Okay, Seder. But that I should lose money out of my pocket? Hefsed gado mishum lifnim mishur sadin ein lo lahafsid. There's no lifnim mishur sadin to make me lose money. Okay, Asisa v'yasher v'tov, and lifnim mishur, it doesn't make me lose money. Elo what? Ma'isi krala man telech b'derech tovim. It's a musar vort. You, because you're either a gadol hador or because you're a very wealthy person. A couple of different explanations about why Rav made him pay. Okay. So now we get to what we saw in the Mordechai. This is why we get to the Mordechai that we saw, and we're going to see this in Shulchan Aruch. The idea that if the finder is a poor person and the loser is a wealthy person, right? The loser lost a very expensive item, but he was miyayesh. So the minute he's miyayesh, harei elu shalo, the finder is allowed to keep it. And if the finder is unequally in the same financial category as the loser, we should say to the finder, listen, it's not appropriate that you make money off of the other guy. And certainly if the loser is a poor person, for sure it's inappropriate. But when the poor person finds it, and technically he's entitled to keep it, we're not going to demand that the poor person go lifnim mishuras hadin to return it to the wealthy person, since technically he's entitled to it. Okay? And again, this is the gray area, and we're going to see, though, it's paskad halacha lamaisa. Remember, I told you it's very rare, and we're going to go back in the halacha also to bar metzra. Those are the two cases, the Aveda, where you have to return it to the finder, assuming all else is equal, that there's a din that you have to behave lifnim mishuras hadin. It's almost an oxymoron. The Chazal chose a couple of cases where they paskened, the din is you have to behave lifnim mishuras hadin. One of them was bar metzra, but we're going to see all of the limitations. And the same, and also here with the lost object. When we get to we're going to go and we're going to see the Rambam and the Tur. Next time, I want to see a couple of lines of Gemara in Bava Basra, which also has to do with the Bar Metzra din, and maybe from there we'll transition to some of the halachas in Bar Metzra, because really Bar Metzra is the essence of Lifnim Mishuras Hadin. It's the essence of Asisa Yashar Vatov. I'm sorry. It's the essence of Asisa Yashar Vatov is the din of Bar Metzra. So it's very instructive to see how the halacha plays out in that area. But I'd also like you to have we're going to see a few Rambams. Okay, so first we're going to see Bava Basra, and then maybe what we'll do is we'll go right to the Rambam on that halacha of Bar Metzra, and then we'll have some other things that have to do with more general Lifnim Mishuras Hadin. I'll send out the specific Rambams that you're going to need, and then the Tur Beis Yosef. Ephraim, what do you want to say?
No, I just, before we go, I wanted to follow up on the text that I sent you after the last Chabura. You said something about all bad things coming from Gaiva.
Rabbeim Shteiman held that all of the things all the machlokas and all the things that go on, that the competition and everything, is all because of Gaiva.
Okay, so my question is, what is the definition of Gaiva? What is Gaiva?
Okay, well,
how do you know if you're a Baal Gaiva or not?
Okay, so well, my first reaction is read Abraham Tversky, because everything about his therapy of addictions is because of low self-esteem. Gaiva and low self-esteem go together, according to Abraham Tversky. But again, we can have a hashkafa musar shir on it with sources. That could be the next topic if you want. We can talk about the hashkafa and musar of self-esteem and Gaiva and insecurities.
So you're saying Gaiva is low self-esteem?
Abraham Tversky holds that real Gaiva comes from low self-esteem. Insecurity generates Gaiva. And if you think carefully about it, that's really what Rabbeim Shteiman was saying. Because the cases that came to him were all about parents who wanted, or the head of an institution didn't want to take somebody in because it was going to damage the reputation of the institution. Okay, so that means that there's an insecurity there. It's very arrogant. It's very insecure. It's very egocentric. It's all about me at the expense of other people. But it's a different shmooze. It's a Musar shmooze. We can definitely deal with it afterwards. Okay? All right, Rabosai, remember, the next Chabur is on Tuesday. Because, all right, everybody agreed Tuesday is a good day. So we'll meet up at Tuesday, same time. Okay? And I'll send you the specific Rambams that we need again. Okay, call to everybody.
Thank you.